So then we'll just go ahead and hop into Marmoset, and there's going to be a couple things we need to bring in. The first thing we're going to need to do is bring in the file. So I did the Apinator Eyes Up is a file I want to work with. It's in previous videos where we baked and we did all this stuff in Substance Painter and set the file up. I have a version of that with the eyes up, so I'm just going to drag that FBX in here. You can go in here to File, Import Model, but most things, if not everything in Marmoset, you can just drag in, so that's how I'm going to be doing things. You're going to see when it comes in, all my texture sets that I've been baking to, like your eye mats and iris mat, skull and teeth mat, they all have their own material. So each one of these is assigned. If I double click the skull material, for example, it's going to select all the things that are assigned to that skull. Now, of course, you can always make a new material. Up here you can see you can duplicate the selected material, or you can just make a brand new one from scratch right here. But since we already have a skull material, this is fine. So we'll just go ahead and double click it so we have it selected. Then you can see there's a bunch of different maps we can plug in. So the first one is that normal map. So again, where we exported, we just threw that in the Marmoset folder here. So we're going to see we have a skull normal. So I'm just going to drag that right onto that normal map there. And depending on, I'm going to hold down Shift and right click just so I can move this light around so we can kind of see a little bit better. Now when we were in Substance Painter, we went here to File, Export Textures, Configuration, here on our normal map, you're going to see our texture set. Normal has the normal DirectX plugged into that. You could do normal OpenGL, and really all that's doing is inverting that Y channel. If you bring something in and it looks weird, just hit this flip Y and that'll go ahead and fix it. So you're going to see this is what this material is expecting, and that looks a lot better. Same thing with a lot of these other maps we're going to be bringing in. If you can't memorize what you're supposed to do, just flip invert or flip Y in the case of the normal map, and you'll probably find the right setting. So the skulls look pretty good. Next we have the gloss map, and that's going to be your roughness. We're going to take this roughness, we're going to drop it right in here. And that looks pretty terrible, but if you go over here to gloss, it's not really a gloss map, it's a roughness map. And that looks about right. And if it looks bad, you can try inverting it. It looks about right, so I think I'm just going to leave it as it is. Now your albedo map here is going to be your base color. Let's go ahead and drag in skull base color. And we got one more map. Here's our reflectivity map, and in this one we're going to put in our metallic. And just like when we were in the gloss map, this isn't really a specular map. Just click the specular and go down here to metalness. So now when you shift right click, that's a result we're going to get. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to skip forward just a little bit. I'm going to go over here to the sky and we're going to select it. Right now we're in an environment that really colors what's going on here a little bit too much for my taste. So I'm going to go over here to presets. And let's just choose desert road. Or really you can choose anything in here that you like, and you can actually bring in your own HDR images just like when we were in Substance Painter. We'll go ahead and click done. And now you can kind of evaluate your object here. And I don't know if you'll ever really need to use this, but over here in your albedo map, you can choose the color, and you can actually tint your base color with another color. But we'll go ahead and just leave that at white. There's a couple more things we need to bring in. We do have an ambient occlusion texture, so I'm just go ahead and click this down arrow and say yes, we do want occlusion. So now we have an occlusion map and a cavity map if you want to bring one in. We do have our occlusion map here, so we're going to take skull ambient occlusion, which was a custom one we made, and then we're just going to drag that right into that occlusion map there. Now the skull itself doesn't have an emissive map, the eyeballs do, so let's talk about that. So we have our iris material, and then we have our eyes mat. So again, just like we had before, we're just going to drag in all the required files that we need. And next we'll do the iris, so we'll just go ahead and select that. And in the iris we do have, I guess we do have an ambient occlusion, so we'll go ahead and add that. Actually, in iris, we didn't add an ambient occlusion. However, we do have an emissive. So let's go ahead and with this occlusion here, say none. But under emissive, we'll say yes, we do have an emissive. And in that emissive map, we'll just drop in our exported emissive. Now, just like in Painter, you can crank up the intensity of that emissive. And when we start doing our post, you'll be able to play around with flare and bloom type stuff. And last, we have our teeth, so go ahead and select that. And for the teeth, just like when we're in Substance Painter, it might be nice to have a shadow to see that, but we can go in here and we can kind of play around with switching this Lambertian diffusion to subsurface scatter. And you can play around with, I guess the most obvious one right now would be like the scatter depth. You can kind of pump that out, but again, you'll be able to see a little bit of that a little better when we start putting some shadows in here. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, in the earlier videos when we were in the skull and we were doing opacity, you can go down here to transparency. When I add a transparency here, you can see we just have a transparency level right here, and you can actually say use the albedo alpha, so you can actually pack that albedo alpha with your transparency there. I don't really have a transparency on here, so I don't need to worry about that. But just in case you wanted to use that, you can definitely do that. I'm going to put that back to none.